In this video, we're going to talk about some of the causes and effects of global climate change. So we're going to focus specifically on some of the human causes. This graphic is from your textbook. It, again, relates it back to the four systems model we've been talking about: the atmosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the geosphere. So you can see some of the different changes here that happen in the different regions of the four model system. So the atmosphere and climate change are related. Scientists have been gathering data to confirm that atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have been increasing since the Industrial Revolution, since we started using fossil fuels to run factories and things like that. In addition, data shows that most of the carbon dioxide that's released comes from burning of fossil fuels. So again, this is linked to human activity. Climate change is a measurable long-term change in the average temperature, clouds, winds, precipitation, and frequency of extreme weather events. Global warming is an increase in the average global temperature. So the two are related, but not exactly the same. So one of the problems that has come about because of human activity is acid rain. Burning fossil fuels releases things like sulfur dioxides and nitrous oxides. These chemicals can dissolve in moisture, like fog or raindrops, and form sulfuric or nitric acid, which can have a pH low enough to damage both living things, but also buildings, paint on cars, and things like that. So when this combination of these chemicals with the moisture in the air can create acid rain, acid fog, acid snow. Acid rain damages plant leaves and harms roots by releasing metals from some soils that can interfere with bacterial decay. Acidification of fresh water can kill aquatic organisms, both plants and animals. Ocean acidification is another major problem associated with human activity. Higher CO2, more dissolved CO2 in the ocean creates carbonic acid, lowers the pH of the ocean water. This can then affect the shell formation of some animals, can damage coral, and things like that. This graphic shows how the use of land has changed because of human activity. We have healthy forest areas in the green. They help protect fresh water. They absorb extra carbon dioxide. They moderate climate. Loss of forests can have negative effects on soil quality. So deforestation is the term we use for the loss of forests. You can see in the graphic here in the U.S. we've seen a significant amount of deforestation in the eastern United States, where most of the population lives. Monoculture is planting large areas with single highly productive crops year after year after year. And this has been a common practice with farming. Fortunately, farmers are understanding that that's not the best thing, and they're rotating crops, and they're doing things to help lessen the impact. Obviously, development and urbanization, building cities, has an impact on the environment. As society develops, more people move to cities and suburban areas. Dense communities produce large amounts of waste, pollution. If the waste are not disposed of, they can affect air, water, and soil by polluting them. Habitat loss, fragmentation, and habitat restoration are the next thing we're going to talk about. Habitat loss is when a natural habitat is completely changed. The species that once lived in the area can be lost to human development. When we convert land to farms, we convert it to cities, whatever. Fragmentation causes biodiversity loss and makes ecosystems more vulnerable to other disturbances. Even though you may have intact, healthy environments, because they're very small, you have more edge effect, which leads to less healthy environments, ecosystems. Sometimes it cuts down on the movement of things because they're not able to get from one fragment to another. And so all those things can have a negative impact on the living things in those areas. Habitat restoration is taking and trying to restore a changed or fragmented ecosystem back to what it was before human activity changed it. We're doing this. It's very difficult. It's expensive. But again, it can be helpful. Another major problem is invasive species. Humans have brought, either intentionally or unintentionally, species into environments where they don't really belong. In order to introduce new species can become invasive. Many invasive species are carried to new habitats by humans, activity, trade, and travel. Snakes were introduced into the Hawaiian ecosystem, and that's caused a lot of negative impacts on the native species there. Asian carp around here, kudzu, and the list goes on and on and on. Pollution. A pollutant is defined as any harmful material created as a result of human activity and released into the environment. CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, and ozone. So the ozone is the layer of the atmosphere that blocks UV light, which can damage DNA and lead to problems. So the chemicals, chlorofluorocarbons, which are used in refrigerants and air conditioners, can get up into the atmosphere and destroy ozone. And because it's a man-made chemical, it takes a long time to break down. Fortunately, most companies have banned the use of CFCs, and we're starting to see this problem actually get better. Ozone at the ground level is not a good thing, and it contributes to smog or air pollution. So industrial and agricultural chemicals can be problematic as well. Residential sewage obviously is a problem if it's not properly treated. We have what we call non-point source pollutants. Can't identify where they specifically came from. So what happens is the pollutant gets in the water, it gets into the producers, and it moves up the food chain. And it becomes more and more and more concentrated through a process we call biomagnification. So the animals at the top of the food chain are more affected. We saw this with DDT and eagles. That's why eagles were for so long an endangered species. It caused their eggshells to be too thin. The young eagles were born too early. A lot of them didn't survive. Again, fortunately, we banned those chemicals, and we're seeing those chemicals finally start to come out of the environment, and we're starting to see recovery. So what is biomagnification? In a food chain, the concentration of pollutant increases as the number of organisms at the trophic level decrease. That's basically what the graphic here is showing.